All right, guys, how many of you have cows? And how many of your cows actually stay in your pasture? That's how I feel. Cows never stay in the pasture. So what I've had to do, what I went through last year was a royal pain. I had to keep the cows put up. I hayed my fields in time. This year I haven't hayed the fields, which is unfortunate because after the cows had been on our pasture and I had spent so much time haying it last year and cleaning it up, the fields were looking really gorgeous a couple weeks ago. Now they've kind of browned out at the tops, which is fine. It's just kind of reseeding in a way. I'll eventually get around to doing a cut of hay out here, but right now I've just got way too much going on. So I've got cows put up and I've been buying hay, but I have acres and acres and acres of grass. So something that we wanted to do when we got cows on our property in the first place is we actually wanted to rotational graze them. But the method of my madness is not the same as other people's rotational grazing because I don't want them grazing in the same formations over and over and over again and rotating them. Nature doesn't work that way. Nature just kind of, it's random. So what I wanted to do was set up on my perimeter fencing some electrical wire, which I still need to get around and install. I've got electrical wire up where they are because if I didn't, they'd be out all over the place. These cattle fences and barbed wire don't stop cows if they want to get through them, but an electric fence, once they touch it once or twice, they don't mess with it anymore. So all of my fencing around the perimeter is going to be cattle fencing with barbed wire, but I'm also going to electrify that fencing. So I've got to clear all of my fence lines, spend the money on all that fencing and get it put in. But I do have enough fencing installed that I could run from their paddock. I could finish a little section of fencing here and connect electrical wire all the way down the T-posts that I ran a year ago. And that would give me a hot line going right down the center of my two main pastures. And from there, I can hook onto that hot wire and put up temporary fencing wherever I want to. And so my plan is to create temporary grazing areas for the cows. I call them in each night with a little bit of a feed for teaser and then let them back out into a new system the next day. I only have 4 cows right now. My neighbor is bringing a bull in July, so hopefully by next year we'll have more cows. But so my areas don't have to be that big. This first area that I'm going to do, because my reel from my wire isn't here yet, and the reel is insulated so I can hang that and not have to unroll it all. So today I'm actually going to set up a little bit of a larger area to get them used to it and give them plenty of roaming space, and hopefully they won't test the wire. But one of the things that I did do before I started this is I mowed down the path where I'm going to go ahead and install this temporary fencing. That way when they get to it, there's nothing interesting on the ground around it, so hopefully they won't test it. And you know, it's going to be wide out in the open. I'm sure that they're going to sniff it, and that's what I want them to do. I want them to sniff it. They've never seen this electric rope before, but if they sniff it and they touch it and it zaps them, they won't mess with that fence again. That's kind of an easy way of training them. Now, some of you are probably thinking that's so inhumane, that's so horrible. I personally have grabbed a hold of the electric fence, and I have a high voltage on it, and I'm perfectly okay. It really just kind of felt like somebody took me and shook me and then let me go. When they let me go, there was a loud pop, or what felt like a loud pop. There wasn't really any noise to it. And that was pretty much it. And I'm perfectly fine. I've been shaking ever since, but that's just, you know, my nerves healing, I guess. So I'm going to install this temporary fence, give them a little bit of grazing area, and, you know, we'll do some videos as we progress with this system. My wife and I were talking this morning, we would like to set it up so that as we move the cows around, we can then re-net it. We're going to use netting to put our sheep back on the same spot. And the reason why you would use a netting for your sheep is because the sheep are going to get through, they'll just go right through electric wire fencing. They need something that's going to stop them from going through. The shocking capabilities of it really aren't going to matter that much to a sheep because they have a lot of wool and they're insulated from the shock, so it doesn't have the same impact. But we will be utilizing electricity on that because predators do respond to the shock very well, and that'll keep the predators off of the sheep. And we'll also move around our guardian dog with them. So just having something that is fenced in a way that they can't get through is going to be important. But right now, we're gonna do our first little trial here with the cows. I've roped off a section that is going to be really kind of our alleyway and then out a little bit. And I'm just gonna let them graze that section down for a bit until it's about 50%, and then I'll move them on to the next one. Hopefully, you know, if I can come up with the time, I'll be able to get out there and hay the areas of our field that need to be hayed, and that way I can stockpile some bales for the winter. But I have an entire other field that I can get hay off of as well. So, you know, it's not gonna kill me to give up 30 bales to get them moving on this field over here, 30 round bales. So that's what I'm doing today, and I'll show you how I install this system, just so that if it's something you end up wanting to do, you can do it yourself. Okay, so what I have here are just some plastic step-in posts. You don't want to use metal posts for this because you're going to be electrifying the line, and your electricity can't have conductivity to the ground. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose. It'll trip your circuit and it won't work. So these posts are pretty simple. You just step them into the ground, and I'm going to space mine about 15 feet apart. I have enough here to do roughly 325 feet. So I'm planning my runs at 325 feet with 2 strands of wire, and my rope is about 650 feet in length. So that actually, you know, it's not that I can only fence in an area that is 325 feet on all sides. I'm actually using some of my existing fencing and enclosures and then going out around that to get a bigger area. But with 4 cows, you know, if I wanted to high density graze, which I will do at some points, I don't want to have all the space that I'm even gonna give them today. But right now I've got 1 cow that's got an appointment to go in, and so I want to get him nice and fat. So I'm going to place my first post there. Okay. I suffer from a problem called no acetol. Alright, so I've got my posts laid out. I didn't need all the posts, so in a couple areas where I thought I could use some extra strength, like in an alleyway where the cows might see a mowed area and think that's an easy way through, I went ahead and installed a second post just to help discourage them from doing that. And then on my corner where I turned, I used a couple extra posts, and then I just filled the rest in wherever I felt it was necessary. What I'm going to do here is attach this post in a way to my T-post so it won't pull away, and I'm using a Romex insulated wire. That way, and I don't have to do much, just kind of wrap it around in there. And that'll keep it from touching, but it will also keep it from pulling away. So I'm going to do that to this end and up where I've attached to the other fence, and then we'll start running our rope. What I am using is a 9-strand rope with aluminum in it. This came from Tractor Supply. A roll of 650 feet of this stuff is roughly 80 bucks. Now you can get some pretty good rope off of Amazon for a lot less money. If I had the time to wait for shipping, I would have probably done that. But what's important when you're looking at electric rope is the conductivity of it. You're not going to get this electric rope super tight. So if you're one of those people who are sold on high tensile and you'll never use anything else, it's not going to make a difference on an electric fence like this. The conductivity is important because you don't want them to mess with the fence. So 9 strands of aluminum wire is pretty conductive, if you ask me. It's not going to they're not going to want to mess with this, bottom line. And what I'm going to do here is I've created, this is just some insulated wire, and I'm going to wrap this pretty tight up together. Make sure that we're getting electrical connection throughout. And then hold the phone. I'm going to unwind this wire just a little bit at the end here. I'm going to always use this end as my connection source. So if I can get the wires out, my goal is to make sure that every wire is electrified. What I'm doing is I'm making sure that I've got the aluminum wrapped tightly around the aluminum there, so that I've made sure that all of these strands will be electrified. Pull that up. And then for this end, I'll have a little bolt, so I could just kind of bolt this onto my other wire, and that should electrify everything just fine for me. It would be nice to get some electrical tape out here and just wrap that real good, but I think I'll hold up all right just with this. Okay, so I'm going to start my rope down at the end where I'm going to connect it to my current electrical system, and I'm just going to give it a couple wraps to make sure that it will hold tight down there, and even wrap that just a tad. And this will basically go through and connect right up top there. So I don't want any of the bare metal sticking out where it can touch anything. Then you just roll it down between the posts. So I've run out of wire or rope. I got a third strand down, a good bit of it. So So I could have gone a lot further with, it still kept it double strand, but I think this is good. The area that I have set up for them is going to last them for about a week, and this only took me maybe 45 minutes of my time. And then as this area runs out of forage or it gets down to about 50%, I'll go ahead and move it and then let them out onto a new pattern and just keep changing the pattern up as time goes by. So as we get into the summer months, I might have to speed things up a little bit because the grass will slow down, and then it'll speed up again in the fall until it stops growing over the winter time. So I think this is looking good. Now I just need to connect it to my wire, which I'm gonna do as soon as I am done turning off the current charge on the electric fence, because I've already grabbed it once, and I'm like most cows, I just need to touch it once to not do it again. Okay, so that's insulated coming through my wire fence, and it's not touching anything. As long as I have no contact with the ground. Sometimes grass can give you contact, so we'll pull some of that back. But as long as I have no contact with the ground, it should be good to go. Next thing I'll do is put my fence tester on there, and I'm gonna wanna test the bottom wire here to see what the voltage is. I'll go turn on the fence, and then we'll just watch this and see how high the volts go. I'm hoping that I'll get up to 7,000 even after this long run. I saw the lights flashing all the way up to 7,000 volts. That's pretty good. That means that if they touch it, they'll feel it. That's a pretty good wire right there. If you trip it, if it's crossed or it's touching the ground anywhere, when you try and plug in your charger, we have a 10-mile fence charger, it's gonna trip the charger. So you can, you'll know if you have a problem right when you plug it in. But when you're out here, it's always good just to test the voltage, make sure you're not getting a major voltage drop. With 10 miles, I don't have anywhere close to 10 miles on this thing yet. So I didn't think I would have much of a drop, and I didn't. All right, so now I'm gonna let these guys out and see how they do on that electric fence. Technically, they could just jump right over that thing if they really want to. And I'm hoping that they don't even want to get close to it after they sniff it. Lisa, my real pretty one, she's the problem child. She likes to jump, and once she goes, it's like the others all of a sudden get enough encouragement to go with her. Open this up and see how they do. It appears though so far they are completely uninterested with the fact that I opened the gate for them. So I'm just going to leave this open and let them come out on their own. The good thing is that we do have somewhat of a perimeter fence. So if I come back and I check on them and they've gotten out, it won't take me long to get them back in. But I'm thinking this will work just fine once they test it and get zapped. If it doesn't, I could come back in with higher posts, but I have to order those online. I can't get those from Tractor Supply, and I was trying to do something quick. And like I said, I'll post links to some of this stuff down below. You can get a lot of this stuff cheaper off of Amazon. All of our electric wire on our fencing is aluminum wire. I got it off of Amazon for the same price as steel wire. I mean, you can't beat that. And it's got a higher conductivity, so if you're like me and you're just trying to keep the animals from having any interest at all in your fences, having something that'll shock a little harder will keep them off of it a lot longer. They won't want to go back. So and that's just ultimately safer, because once you have cows starting to test fences, this when you have accidents, and it's no good. Well guys, I'd say that was a success. What do you think? Yeah. Glad you guys had a lot to say about this. It's funny, when I first let them out, they ran all the way along the temporary fence line, and then they started beelining it that way. And I thought for sure they were gonna go right through it, but right when they got to it, they came to a halt. So they've already figured out what electric wire is, and they don't wanna mess with it. Right, Lisa? She can jump it. That's my only concern, is if she wants to, she can jump that fence. And then these guys always find a way to follow.